Hey guys, wanted to go over some shocking housing market news. I just got done doing a whiteboard video and I kind of just glossed over this quickly. I mentioned it during the video, but I really wanted to dive into the details here. I didn't do it on the whiteboard because it would have extended the video another 10 or 20 minutes. And I try, believe it or not, I try to keep them as short as possible. But I need to give a hat tip to Meet Kevin YouTube channel, his YouTube channel. Kevin is probably the hardest working YouTuber I have ever seen in my life, and he has had tremendous success. He gives a lot of value in his videos. So if you haven't checked his channel out, it's at Meet Kevin. It's really good for kind of young millennials who are trying to figure out personal finance. And I'm actually interviewing him tomorrow for the Rebel Capitalist show. We might have kind of a little bit of a back and forth debate a little bit. I'm kind of getting excited about it because he's very bullish on California real estate and I am not. I'm not bullish on anything that has to do with California. So we might have a little respectful fun back and forth. So stay tuned for that. But I got this info from Kevin, so I want to give him credit where credit is due. But check this out. We all know about the forbearance for the mortgages and that a lot of the people, in fact, probably 5 million roughly people right now in the United States are not paying their mortgage payment. They're not having to make that payment. Therefore, they can take that money if they still have their job and they can buy stocks, they can buy Bitcoin, they can buy cars, they can buy, who knows, eat out at dinner, they can pay down debt, they can do all these different things, which is artificially propping up the economy. And we've heard that the forbearance is for 180 days. There's a lot more to it than that. Check this out. I'm going right to congress.gov, and this is the actual CARES Act, all 335 pages of it. All right, and this is page 210, section 4022, foreclosure moratorium and consumer right to request forbearance. So let's go down here where it talks about the duration of forbearance. Upon a request by a borrower for forbearance under paragraph 1, such forbearance shall be granted for up to 180 days and shall be extended for an additional period of up to 180 days at the request of the borrower, provided that at the borrower's request, either the initial or extended period of forbearance may be shortened. So it's saying that you can shorten it if you want, but you can also extend the original 180 days, an additional 180 days, therefore making it almost a year. Most people knew that it was 180. I would say a smaller percentage knew that you could extend it for up to a year, but almost nobody realizes this next part. Check this out. Make sure you're sitting down and you got a stiff drink. It is definitely stiff drink time. Excuse me, that is for sure. Going up to, one thing I wanted to highlight there that really sets the stage. Before it talked about the duration forbearance that we just discussed, it's got a topic above, in general, during the covered period. Those words are very important because it defines the covered period above. A borrower with a federally backed mortgage loan experiencing a financial hardship due directly or indirectly to the pervasive sickness emergency may request forbearance. Okay, we understand that. And by the way, you really don't have to have any documents backing it up. You can just basically say that you are experiencing hardship and they'll grant it to you. But that's really important. During the covered period. Got it? We're all on the same page? Okay. So what is the quote unquote covered period? That's really, really important because we don't know yet when the person's ability to start the 180-day forbearance, we don't know how long that extends. Like, did that start from the day the CARES Act came out? Or was that another month? Are we still in that period where I could go to the bank today and ask for forbearance and I would be granted the first 180 days and then extended, or with my option, I could extend it another 180 days. So I could go a year from today's date? Here we go. That's why that covered period is so important. The covered period, the term covered period, means the period beginning January 31st, 2020 and ending on the later date of 120 days after the date of enactment of this subparagraph. So 120 days after the CARES Act went into effect. So you figure it went into effect, I don't know, let's say in March. So call it 4 months. So April, May, June, July. So something around July, you would think would be the deadline for applying for forbearance. So once July is done, we can take it a year further and say, okay, at that point in time, everyone has got to start paying their mortgage back. But that's not the case. 120 days after, so it's 120 days after the date of the enactment of the CARES Act, or 120 days after the date on which the national emergency concerning the cerveza sickness outbreak declared by the president March 13th, 2020, under the National Emergencies Act terminates. So terminates. So the question becomes, are we in a national emergency right now? Has that terminated? And I tried to find this on Google, and I don't think it has. I think it, and you would, I mean, most of our country, or a lot of our country, is still in lockdown, for heaven's sakes. We're still dealing with a pandemic. So I would be really shocked if we weren't currently still under a, what's the official, a quote unquote national emergency as declared by the politicians or the president himself. So when will this national emergency end? Who knows? I mean, if we get 3 waves of the cerveza sickness, just using that as an example, we'll still be under national emergency, let's say, until the summer of 2021. And what happens if, for whatever reason, we extend the national emergency further? You get my point, is that the jobless claims, which I went over in my whiteboard video, those are starting to flatten out, and they're flattening out at a much higher level than the highest point in the GFC. So in other words, the job market right now is much worse than it was at its worst point during the GFC. And those numbers aren't getting better. They're flattening out. They're plateauing at that line in the sand, which tells us future incomes are going to most likely go down. There's going to be a lot of pressure on wages in the future, especially wages adjusted for inflation. And I would argue that if something affects the stimmies, then you're going to see unemployment, the actual unemployment rate that they'll admit to, really go up higher as well. If you look at shadow stats, the real unemployment rate or the underemployed rate is extremely high. Plus, we've got 5 million people right now in forbearance. So my point is, if the job market continues to deteriorate, and if we don't see an economic recovery, which we won't, because the whole entire economy is built on stimulus right now. So if we continue with that stimulus, the economy is only going to get worse from a standpoint of we're not going to have as many goods and services, because it destroys the creation of goods and services, or it prevents us from creating more stuff, right? Which by definition means that we are getting less and less wealthy. you see. So you have all of these dynamics playing out at the same time, which would lead me to believe that the job market is going to deteriorate further. The economy structurally, for sure, will deteriorate further, regardless of how much stimulus we get. And therefore, people's ability to pay their mortgages will also decline over the long term. Okay, but people can continue to go on forbearance. So even if we have, let's say, 5 million people under forbearance now, why won't that go up? Maybe in the fall, or excuse me, in the spring, or maybe even in the summer. Who knows what happens? I think the main takeaway from this video is to illustrate the fact that the forbearance hasn't necessarily peaked. It's not something that's in the past and now we're waiting for it just to play out, right? The forbearance, we could see another spike in these applications due to a deteriorating job market, or if the stimulus gets held up, or for whatever reason, right, that no one is really thinking about. I think the majority of the people that commentate on this, including myself, thought that the end of the application period for forbearance would have been maybe the middle of the summer. So we've just got to wait a year, and then all of those people will be paying their mortgage again. But according to the CARES Act, that is not true. We don't know when these people will have to start paying their mortgages back. We could see another wave. This could, I don't know how long this can go on. So when you're trying to figure out what's going to happen to home prices in 2021, you've got to take this into consideration. If people don't have to pay their mortgage, chances are they won't be forced to sell. Take that into consideration. We'll see you on the next video.